Of this abstract talk about period one and period two and period three, I want to get real. I want to talk about a real data set with real customers, real behavior, and real decisions on the part of the organization that actually provide the data to us. Okay? I'm going to actually start with a non-profit context. And you might find that appealing, you might not. In some cases, it doesn't really matter. Let me give you a few details about it, and then when we look at the data set, um, as a whole, you'll see it's applicable to a broad variety of different settings: profit, non-profit, domestic, international, B2B, B2C. I think everyone will find something appealing about this basic kind of data. I want to talk about a specific non-profit organization that's looking into a donor over time. So with many companies, they're going to take their customers, their donors, and we're going to find a whole bunch of them who are acquired at the same time. I think this is actually a very important lesson beyond the analytics, beyond the predictive models. Very important for companies to be able to look at their customers on a cohort basis. Let's identify all customers who either were acquired at the same time, or were acquired in the same campaign, or maybe through the same channel, or maybe they all made the same first purchase with us. Well, in this case, it's going to be the time-based cohort. We're going to look at a bunch of donors who made their first donation to this nonprofit organization in 1995. So, they did not exist to us until 1995, and they made a donation. Hey, we have a new donor here, right? And we're going to follow these folks for the first 6 years after 1995, and then we're going to make prediction about them for the 5 years after that. So we are talking about a very long data set. Again, the kind of data that companies might not have had in the old days. But today, because of digital everything, it's become increasingly easy to create these long histories for customers, and more important than ever, to be able to make statements about who is going to do what in the future, right? So you can picture the data structure right over here. We can see that we have 11,104 customers, 11,104 rows in the Excel sheet. Then we have a bunch of columns where each column represents a year, and we simply are asking, did they or did not they make the donation? For right now, we don't care how many donations they might have made. Although rarely do people make more than one a year, and we don't even care the M part of the RFM or what the size of the donation were. All we care about is did they or did they not make the donation. I'm going to give 1 if they made a donation and 0 if they did not. So if you look at the data structure here, first you'll see a whole column of ones, because they are telling us that these customers were acquired once. So the first column would be all ones. Now you see a bunch of zeros and basically saying that they did not make the donation. If it is 1, they made the donation over each of the next 6 years after being acquired. So let's first stare at the data and really understand what's going on. And then we're going to make some statements about them in the future. Before we do even that, so there are a bunch of customers doing things and not doing things over time. So in this particular case, it's donations. But you can imagine that this in the same data structure for, I don't know, a hotel chain. So we have a bunch of people in our loyalty program, and did they stay in one of our properties in the given month? Or it might be a credit card firm. Did these people have revolving interest charge or not on the given month-to-month basis? So it could be for a mobile gaming application. Did people play the game or not on a day-to-day basis? Or it could be Facebook. Did it check the Facebook or not? So I hope you can think that this data structure is very practical. I don't really care what the ones or zeros represent, whether they are purchases, whether they are posting in social media, staying in a hotel, could be anything. So interest charges, whatever it might be, and I don't even care what the time period is. So here we are focusing on a year as the period, but it absolutely can be a month, a week, a day, even a second, depending on what the situation is. So before I go on, I just want you to appreciate the generality of this kind of data structure. It's a data that many of you have contributed to as a consumers, as companies try to track and anticipate what you might be doing. And as a business side, you might be working with data structures like this all the time to help you become just a little bit more proficient. Let me give you an example. I'd like to actually make a prediction for me based on what limited information you might have in front of this in the slide. I would like you to make some predictions on certain kind of customers. So for instance, let's start with Bob here. Okay, let's start with Bob. And you can see that Bob made a prediction every year from 95 through 2001. Now, what do you think? Now, in the 6 opportunities, he donated all 6 times. He went 6 out of 6. So let's make a statement about Bob for the next 5 years. Right? So in fact, I would like to really write that down. What's your best guess about how many donations Bob will make out of the next 5 opportunities? And if your answer is, I don't know, I don't have any idea, then you're absolutely right. Right? Because to be honest with you, I don't necessarily care about Bob. I don't necessarily care about one customer. What I really care about in my ability to make predictions about wouldn't be Bob per se, but it would be Bob's. To me, about all the customers who share the same characteristics. And so while it might be hard for me to make statements about one Bob, but if I start grouping them together, and in this data set you'll see there are about 1,200 Bobs, I want to be able to make statements about Bobs on average. So if we think about the Bobs who have gone 6 out of 6 since being acquired, how many donations on average will they make out of the next 5 opportunities? So any of them will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 donations. When you look across all of them, some will make 0, some will make 1, some will make 2, 3. So what's the average across all of them? I want you to write that down. So what's Bob? And now let's look at Sarah over here. And she was acquired in 95, but she hasn't donated since then. She has gone 0 out of 6. She has done absolutely nothing. Now I want you to make a prediction about Sarah, or again, the Sarahs. All of these customers who have done nothing since being acquired. Now you might be wondering, why would we make a statement about Sarah? She has done nothing for 6 years. Let's just get rid of those customers. They can't be worth anything to us. And the fact of the matter is, any one of the Sarahs probably is not. But why is it that we are interested in tracking Sarah? Because there are so many of them. Even if you look at this slide, there are how many Sarahs you'll see, the 0 since being acquired. Turns out that it's very hard to say something about Sarahs, but they're still valuable, right? And this kind of data exists quite a bit in this kind of data set. In this particular data set, there are 33% of customers are like Sarahs. So while one of the Sarahs might not be worth much, all these Sarah together might be worth a lot, right? Actually, there's a fairly large chunk of value from Sarahs to the company, especially when you look at it in the long run. So I want you to write down your prediction for Sarah, or for the Sarahs, those 33% of them. How many donations on average will they make over the next 5 years? So I have one more question. I want you to compare Mary with Sarmila here. You can see the numbers for yourself right here. So I want you to look at Mary and Sarmila, and in fact I want you to answer 2 questions. Question 1, which of them will be worth more on average over the next 5 years? And question 2, by how much? So take a minute, look at Mary's and look at Sarmila's. And I think what it is that makes one of them more valuable than the other. I want you to write that down. Make the prediction about which one's going to be more valuable and by how much. Okay? And think about the logic. Why would Mary, why would there be a distinction between Mary and Sarmila? Let me stop here and I'll come back with the next video.